This podcast is made possible in part by the Kent County Medical Society Alliance and WKTV Community Media.
Welcome to the Be Nice podcast, where we dive into conversations that help us recognize, understand, and take action when it comes to mental health and suicide prevention. I'm Christy Buck, your host. The Be Nice action plan is simple: to notice, to invite, to challenge, and empower. 4 steps that can change, improve, and ultimately save lives. Together, we'll share real-life stories, insights, and tools to break down the stigma around mental health and inspire positive change in our communities. Our guest today for this episode is Rachael Steil. We go way back, but we'll get into that in a moment. But we are going to, as we always do, we're going to bust a myth, and this one specifically is surrounding eating disorders. The myth: you can tell if someone has an eating disorder just by looking at them. The fact is that eating disorders can appear in any and occur in any body size. People can look healthy while experiencing severe symptoms. Many times symptoms are invisible. Hormonal changes, bone density loss, heart issues, and obsessive thoughts often appear before any physical signs. Runners and athletes can hide it well. Lean, discipline, appearing like they are ready for the sport. Even though many endurance athletes look healthy, research shows that 62% of female runners and 19% of male runners experience disordered eating. We're really going to be hearing the proper language to use. We're going to be learning how to notice. We're going to be going through the action plan of how do you start that conversation. Remember, the reason why people do not get help is because of the stigma. Open conversations about mental health, challenging myths, and talking about resources reduce stigma. So today's guest is Rachael Steil. She is the author of Running in Silence, the founder of the Running in Silence 501c3, and a nationally recognized eating disorder recovery speaker. A former All-American cross-country and track runner and award-winning coach, she has presented at schools, colleges, and coaching with honest, hopeful stories. Rachael has appeared on The Dr. Nandi Show, WGVU's Family Health Matters, and in publications including Vogue, U.S. News and World Report, and Runner's World. She equips coaches and athletes with the tools to thrive both in sport and in life. Thank you so much for being here today. Quite a bio.
Yeah, thank you.
I love it, and such important places to be in getting that awareness out there. And I know you're going to break it down simply, but I want to first start by asking you about you yourself. Tell us about Rachael.
Yeah, well, I have been a runner since I was 5 years old. That was like my entire identity for so long, which I think also kind of lent itself to an eating disorder later, because when we think of runners and athletes, we think of a lot of discipline and hard work, and I loved that about running. I was very competitive, and my mom got me into running and the joy of it, so I did really love the sport. And it was such a big part of my life that when I entered college, I had been focusing on food a little more because I thought that if I controlled my food better, I'd run faster. And it seemed to initially work. Like my times were getting better. So I made that dangerous connection between losing weight, running faster, and if I just controlled my food even more, I could get even faster and receive all this praise and admiration. That's what I grew up getting. You know, if I have straight A's, if I run fast, I'm going to be loved and valued. And so that just got worse. Going from there, I started doing different diets, thinking that that would help me, and really it just exposed the eating disorder for what it really was. And from there, I started writing about my experiences because I wanted others to understand what it felt like to go through that. It was so lonely. And so when I shared that on the website, runninginsilence.org, I put that together. I think it was my junior year in college at Aquinas College. I heard from other people, me too, I struggle as well. And I thought, oh, I'm not so alone. Like, you don't have to be super thin, have lost a ton of weight to realize that your struggles are valid. And so I wanted to fight against that myth with running and sports in general. And from there, I wrote about my story through the book Running in Silence, decided we needed a nonprofit so we could speak about this, and just kept learning from there and growing and learning from the professionals. So I have connected with Dr. Paula Quattromoni. She is the leading eating disorders and sports expert in the U.S. of Boston
Excellent.
University. She's amazing. So I could not have done this alone. I've gotten so much support. I am a coach and an athlete. So connecting with the professionals has been very helpful for me to learn how to navigate these things because I'm not a dietitian or therapist. And yeah, I think that pretty much sums up where it started and where I am now.
Right. So when you were, when did anyone notice these changes, and how old were you when someone finally said something? Just answer that. Just the age. Just say
Right.
that.
I would say because there were multiple small conversations over time, I had to have been 19 when I think people noticed that something might be off and they started moving toward it, and then it got shut down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think, though, that at that point, now that you know so much
Yeah.
about eating disorders and you look back, was it at that 7 or was it at 10? Was it the elementary, middle school?
Well, I had perfectionism since I was a small girl
Yeah.
and a lot of anxiety. I was sort of recently diagnosed with OCD, which I can see started
yeah.
when I started to think and get nervous about
Right.
things. So I think my parents always knew when I was very young that I had those tendencies, but they thought, oh, that's just Rachel.
Yeah.
So when the eating disorder developed and I was very focused on the control over food, my parents thought, that's just Rachel. That's just how athletes are.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think people noticed things, but they didn't think that's a red flag.
Right.
That it could get worse.
Yeah. And I think what we know is that eating disorders, of all mental health disorders, they have the highest mortality
Yes.
rate. And that's why I'm so passionate about making sure that we get this information to parents, to educators, obviously, of course, because it doesn't start just with food is just another piece of this.
Right.
Right? And you're nailing it with so much of it is that undiagnosed anxiety disorder, where anxiety disorder is taking over that ability to go to school, carry out my daily activities, and engage in those satisfying relationships, right?
Yes.
So we look and we measure mental health disorders by those three things and the disability that it's causing on a person, which is so interesting because we often think that, oh, kids can just persevere. They can just push through this. Oh, it's just Rachel.
Yes.
When in fact, no, it was big. And we need
Yeah.
to learn these coping skills, right?
Right.
Because ultimately with eating, again, it's that control.
Yes.
Okay. So I know you mentioned some of those signs and symptoms and the warning, right? The signs that it could be the onset of something. Can you add a little bit more?
Yeah, so maybe someone isn't, like I think of a sports team. Usually for our cross country team, we have like pasta dinners and there's different events that athletes might do together outside of practice. Maybe an athlete isn't showing up to those things anymore. They may seem withdrawn. Maybe they only eat certain foods at team gatherings. They could seem really sluggish in their workouts. They look tired. Any behavior changes, mood changes could indicate that something is wrong. And usually, like for coaches, we're not in a place to diagnose someone, but we're in a place to notice if something seems off or different.
Yeah. And so then, okay, so now we're going to dive into that action plan further. And I think, you probably agree, that inviting into the conversation is one of very difficult, but it can be easy.
Yeah.
And that's where we love the plan because we give people those tools of how do you start the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes when we're talking about things that may be disturbing, that are uncomfortable to talk about, I'm just going to put it out there, like weight. No one wants to, and especially now with so much weight loss in the world, you don't even sometimes know what to say. Like, you look fantastic as opposed to you look terrible before.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go down that road of how would you invite yourself into a conversation with someone who you suspect may be, I've seen her missing the team dinners,
Yeah.
I'm watching these behaviors. Go for it.
Yeah, well, you want to bring up those behaviors that you've noticed. First, you're checking in with a person, say, I really value you as not just an athlete, but as a person. I'm concerned about your health and well-being. I've noticed these things, and you want to share what you have noticed. I'm talking from a coach's perspective. Yeah. You want to share what you have noticed as a coach, not what other people have said, what you have noticed, and that you're concerned about their health and well-being. Again, it can be, you seem really tired in workouts. Is everything okay? Do you want to talk about it and give them that space to talk if they feel comfortable doing so? And we are not in a place to diagnose, so you do not need to use any term like eating disorder. An athlete might say, are you saying I have an eating disorder? I don't know, but we can see if something else is going on. Would you be open to that? So again, you're sticking to the facts of what you have noticed.
I love it. And that's where sometimes people get intimidated because they don't want to go there because I don't know a lot of information.
Yeah.
Which I think it's okay. What you said is, I don't know.
Right.
But we can look into
Let's explore together. And you don't want to comment on their appearance or weight because, again, something I say in our Running in Silence presentations, weight isn't necessary to determine if someone is struggling with an eating disorder. And I've had people in the past when I was struggling say something about my weight. Are you eating enough? It looks like you've lost a bunch of weight. I took it as a compliment. And they were genuinely concerned. I'm so glad they even said something. But we don't want to go towards weight and appearance because that is not a main indicator. And some people feel like their eating disorders aren't valid if they haven't lost weight. Someone may not lose or gain any weight at all, or they may gain weight through their experience. So again, I just want to stress that myth that you talked about at the beginning. It is not about weight.
So then we've invited, so here we go with the big one. And this is challenging that stigma, which obviously in that conversation when you were mentioning that, you're already dealing with it because right away, what are you saying? That I have an eating disorder, right? Yeah. No, that's not what I'm saying. So now we're getting through that stigma, what kids or even adults think that it is. All right. So we're breaking that down. Now we're going to go into what other resources available. And when we're talking resources, it's not just like online going to and reading about, which is very dangerous. We'll just put that out there right now.
Yeah.
Finding doctor social media. No. But what are some of the resources? And also, I really want to talk about the depth of when left untreated. That right there, how we go about managing the illness. I want to know your story. At what point and what treatment and help did you get?
Yeah. Well, first with the resources, like I said, I've learned so much from the experts. Dr. Paula Quattromoni has talked about the 3 primary resources that athletes need. They need their doctor, a therapist, and a dietitian. And you can find a therapist through like Psychology Today if you want to look online. There's a zip code search bar. Same thing with eatright.org for a dietitian. And your doctor can also connect you with these kind of resources too. For coaches, they can connect with the athletic trainer because they may have more resources on hand too. And if you're an athletic trainer, make sure you do have these resources ready and available for your coaches because yes, they work on the physical side of things, but they can also be there to support on the mental side of things too, in terms of, getting athletes the kind of help that they need. So when I was struggling, my doctor, unfortunately, probably didn't see the red flags. Not all doctors are well versed in this area of eating disorders or REDS, relative energy deficiency in sport, which is when an athlete's under fueling and it affects all systems of the body. So my doctor didn't really see the red flags. Again, it was kind of like, oh, well, she's an athlete. But when I first started struggling, well, in the midst of my struggling, I told my mom what was going on. And she was the first person to say, oh, what do you think about getting professional help, like a therapist? And when I initially heard that, I thought, oh, no, it's not that bad. And so many people will think that, especially those struggling with food. They think, well, I'm not thin enough. I am fine. I can fix it myself, which is exactly what I thought. So it took me another 8 months before I was open to accepting any kind of professional help. I finally just reached rock bottom and I was like, I don't know what else to do. I guess maybe I do need support. So I went to an eating disorder therapist And by working with her, I eventually went to an eating disorder sports dietitian. I was initially very resistant to the dietitian. I thought, I know everything there is to know about food. I don't need to go. And then when I ended up going to the dietitian, she was the game changer.
Wow.
Yeah, huge, had such a huge impact on my life. So in the end, I did have, we let my doctor know about the diagnosis. I was working with a therapist and a dietitian. And this was before I knew this is what was needed at the time. But those were great resources for me.
Excellent. So did you end up having any physical, because it could affect every organ in your body, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's very serious. And I
Yes.
want to make a point of that. I got a little bit obsessed. I went down this road. About 2 months ago, I was listening to 70s music, okay, and I love Karen Carpenter,
Yeah.
right? So then I
Yes.
got obsessed, and I'm the passenger in the car, so I'm Googling Karen Carpenter, because she was so beautiful. And then I ended up reading so much, and she was so young.
Yes.
I mean, what a great, talented woman who a lot of it started with someone mentioning to her, you got to lose weight.
Right.
If you're going to be a superstar, you got to lose weight. And it doesn't just start with that.
Right.
Right? I mean, come
Yeah.
on. And even when you said the doctor, which is so interesting too, because they're so focused on that percentile where you land. And even when you get into your elementary school ages, doctors focus on your child is in the 82 percentile, or, oh, well, they're way above.
Yeah.
You got to watch what they're eating.
Right.
So I heard that about one of my daughters, and she was in the room that day, and I just about,
Oh, wow.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
So anyway, talk about like that organ, that whole taking over of very, very important organs in your body.
Yeah, well, the first few things that I noticed now that I'm looking back is I was injured a lot. I was losing strength. So, especially my freshman year at Aquinas College, I hadn't had my period for over a year, which was the first red flag, and that can lead to bone density issues. Luckily, I didn't see any stress fractures initially. My kneecap ended up breaking my junior year as a runner. And that could have been related to the eating disorder. I mean, anyone who's under fueling has a higher risk of injury. It's 8 times higher. Wow. Huge. So if coaches want better performances from their athletes, this is important information. But I would have like muscle strains, constant knee injuries. There was a knee injury that really took me out for a long time. And my eating disorder fueled how bad that was too, because anytime my knee felt a little bit better, I'd immediately start running because I was so scared if I didn't have the control of running, I wouldn't have the control of food. And so it's just this vicious cycle. So most of the stuff, I'm very fortunate it didn't affect anything long term, it seems. I mostly just saw a lot of injuries, and it was mostly affecting me mentally.
Yeah. Oh my God. How painful.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
and sometimes we talk about the pain that comes with any type of mental health disorder. You know, those constant thoughts in your head and not being able to be in control of those thoughts.
Yes.
So, and that definitely leads into, were you ever hospitalized?
I was not.
Okay. And we know that we do have good facilities. And it's
Yes.
important that, I like what you said a moment ago about those 3 most important pieces in treatment, right? The doctor, the therapist, and the dietitian.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
All right. And typically, when you do go to a facility or you enter into treatment and get the right diagnosis, they're going to go for that, right? They know that. All right.
Yeah.
So then ultimately empower, and I think that that's where you are, and that is loading yourself with those. Getting help and treatment obviously are the number 1 and 2. So access to services and utilizing the services. And you did say that you had access, but you weren't going to
Yes.
utilize them yet because of that stigma. So
Yes.
those are 2 big ones. And then on top of it all, there's these other really great things that we can put, and they're called protective factors. So I might not get more ill, or it could protect me from even taking my life. So we know that with any mental health disorder, that can be a risk factor.
Yes.
So you've loaded yourself with protective factors. Let's talk about some of those. And when you entered into counting on individuals, counting on your sport to be that, right? Because in a way, it was a risk factor also.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So go for it.
Oh, I'm so fortunate, first of all, that I got the support that I needed, and it was right here in town. Not everyone has that kind of access. I look back on it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky. And my parents were there to support too. My first conversation with my mom didn't go very well because she had all the misconceptions we normally do about eating disorders, but she learned through that experience and she stayed with me. And she got me the support. She knew she couldn't do that, but she also went to therapy with my dad, a separate therapist from the one I was going to, so that they could better understand eating disorders. So you can, if you're in that supportive role, you can learn more about what someone is going through, whether it's depression, anxiety, eating disorders, so that you can better be there to support. And something I also say in our Running in Silence presentations, as a supportive person, it's better to offer support, not advice. And that's something my mom learned as well. So I had my parents on board. I eventually told my teammates in college, and that was so nerve-wracking. I was shaking at practice, but I set some time aside, told them what I was going through, and most of them knew by then, but they were there to support. Someone give me a hug, like just having my teammates in the know and being there to support. I had to step away from my sport for some time so that I could take care of myself. My weight, I was at a healthy weight.
Yeah.
I was physically okay, but mentally I was not. So I needed to step away from my sport, reevaluate why I did the sport in the first place, so that I could go back into it. Not, to be the fastest runner, because that shouldn't matter anymore at that point. I had to take care of myself. How could I love running again? Because that's where I started. As a 5-year-old girl, I just loved this sport. I needed to get back to that. And then I had the support of my coach. He didn't know everything there was to know about eating disorders, but he was there to support. He put my health before my performances. He put my well-being before my performances. I was so scared that I wouldn't perform as well without the eating disorder, which is wild to think now because I was constantly injured. I was not a better athlete with an eating disorder. So having his support was huge as well. So it really took a village. Again, I can't stress how valuable that was and how lucky I was to have that.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. And having good coaches, which,
Yes.
we want to make sure that we share all this information. So how are you getting out there? Tell me more about your travels of presentations. I'm so excited. I just like hearing it in this podcast.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine what it would be like in you speaking to a large audience.
Yeah.
What's that been like?
Well, I decided I wanted to share my story so that coaches could better understand what it's like for an athlete to go through it. And I had first the opportunity to speak to Michigan coaches. I think it was back in 2017 at the Michigan track and cross country clinic. I was so nervous, but I got a lot of great feedback. I think it seemed to help a lot of coaches, and I had started coaching around that time as well, and thought, there's so much I don't know as a coach. I would like this information.
Yeah.
And so I learned more and decided, okay, I can tell my story and also give specific things that we can do as coaches to start combating this and be able to support our athletes better. So it was a big learning experience for me too. And I realized, we have this Michigan coaches clinic. Almost every state has a clinic.
They do.
Whoa, let's do this. And so I started reaching out to a bunch of other clinics and was able to speak to coaches there. And a lot of the topics is like about specific training. And yes, that's important. And a lot of coaches go into coaching because, they love the sport. But how do we keep athletes in the sport too? We need to address all of these other things, including eating disorders and mental health. And so bringing that conversation in was nerve-wracking, but also let's talk about it. And to see other coaches on board was just very exciting. So I'm also working to speak to athletic directors because they have an important role in understanding what's going on with their athletes, and they can be a part of that change as well, endorsing more mental health and eating disorder trainings for their coaches. So it's been a great eye-opening experience going around the country, and I give so much credit to a lot of these directors who have brought me in because it's not a happy topic. It's really tough, but we can see the, I guess I hate to say excitement, but that we can talk about these things more openly. Like, that is a good thing.
Yep.
That's a good thing. It doesn't have to be this scary thing anymore. And I like that they're bringing that in.
And also with boys, there's such a misconception
Yes.
that, boys, it's girls. They're obsessed with
Right.
their eating. No, I mean, there's a huge component of boys. And I know that even with wrestlers, they're focused on those weigh-ins, right? I mean, they're losing and gaining weight in a matter of minutes, right?
Yeah.
You have 10 minutes to get to this weight class.
Yeah.
So I want that information also to go to these sports that have a lot of boys and men, because again, it's such a co-occurring, right? Because you've got that anxiety, you've got that component of anxiousness and OCD.
Yep.
Right? So good luck on that one too.
Yeah.
Because I hope I get you some gigs to get in front of the guys.
Yes.
And I think it's so important.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. There's coaches who have attended my talks who coach boys teams. I think we need more coaches because we have to break that stigma still. But they are recognizing this more and more. I remember we had a football coach who attended this talk, which was so great. He asked awesome questions. Like it's so exciting that we are getting more people on board.
Yep.
And recognizing.
Just by talking about one thing also can lead you to put your head into a different space of understanding some of those obsessions that just go with sports in general, right? And that is obsessive compulsive disorder can all get mishmashed together, and before you knew it, you're trying to control all these things.
Right.
Even with exercising, right? That itself can be brought to, I got to exercise more. I got to do more. I've got to maintain my weight. I got to do this. I've got to be faster. And then in addition, just that whole part of, being number one, right? And being that champion. And sometimes that gets so ingrained in our children's heads when they're just starting to show a talent in a certain sport, right? Thinking forward and ahead, not about your kid, but about future of what they could be.
Yes.
So that's a really high rate amongst female runners, 62%, 19% of male runners. Where else? You've written in Runner's World, was that it?
Yeah, that was with Dr. Paul Quattromoni too.
Okay.
Yes. Rachael Steil had posted, she was from Michigan State, had posted about her experience with food and body image on Instagram, and it blew up, and Runner's World reached out to me about writing more about this. They knew what I was doing with Running in Silence, so I teamed up with Dr. Paul Quattromoni, and I think that's very important too. I stress that with the presentations. I'm speaking from an athlete coach perspective as someone who's been through it, but I am not a therapist or a dietitian. So teaming up with the professionals is a great way to get this information out there. I'll share my story, but this is also, the professional perspective as well.
I love it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was huge for when we came with the Be Nice book. We had great endorsers. This is a really simple plan, and it's just 4 steps, but everything else in between to be diagnosed, to get somebody to the right resources where they can get the good help that they need.
Yes.
So tell me, what's the future like for you? What is your dream?
Yeah. I've been learning as I go. That's something I stress over and over. I don't know what's next, but I am continuing to pursue reaching out to schools, universities, coaching clinics, and athletic director conferences. I mentioned that as well because they need this information, athletic trainers. So we're going to keep getting this message out there and pushing for more mandatory education around this topic.
Absolutely.
I say in every presentation, we have trainings for concussions for coaches. But we don't have trainings for eating disorders.
Yeah.
And concussions are huge. We need those trainings. They're the long-term effects of not treating concussions properly is devastating. We need that, but it's very similar to eating disorders. The long-term effects are devastating. I went through it myself. I don't want more people going through that. So pushing that forward, I think, is a big part of our mission.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I always ask a funky question, so you
Yeah.
can give yourself a moment. But what's your go-to rom-com?
Oh, rom-com. I don't really watch rom-coms.
What is your genre? What do you like?
Oh, it sounds kind of boring, but I love listening to podcasts. Not
Nice.
boring because, hey, we're on a podcast
We're on it,
right
girl.
now.
Yeah.
I love my YouTube videos. I love learning.
Nice.
So a lot of, podcasts and YouTube videos.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for being here today, and I want to thank everybody for listening to today's podcast. Together, we busted a harmful myth about severe and persistent mental illness. Again, we hope that by sharing stories like Rachel's, we can continue to break down stigma and encourage you to notice, invite, challenge, and empower yourself and others when it comes to mental illness, mental health, and ultimately preventing suicide. If today's episode resonated with you, share it. I'd love to give Rachael the opportunity to get through the whole United States and all 50 states, speaking to coaches and to athletes. Don't forget, if you or someone you know is struggling, there are resources available. Text NICE to 741741 or call 988. You can also visit our website at benice.org to learn more about our programming. And while there, take the pledge. Take the pledge to learn the action plan. And most of all, be nice.
This podcast is made possible in part by the Kent County Medical Society Alliance and WKTV Community Media.